Hello everyone, this is Albin Bejramovic, and today we're going to be talking about backer personas. In startup and marketing world, this is simply known as a buyer persona. And I think that no self-respecting marketer will attempt to market to audience they don't understand. So you're always going to hear marketers talk about target audience. Well, this is really a representation of your target backer or your target audience based on customer discovery and some educated speculation about customer demographic, want, need, and motivation. So basically, why do they want to engage with you to begin with? And some predictions about their behavioral patterns. If you don't know your backer persona, you will try to be all things to all people. So sure, your friends, your family are going to back you if you're on their good side, but you really need to know who it is you're providing value for. And on the other hand, what are their habits and how do they define value? So you have some hypothesis, I'm sure. We all do. I mean, that's the reason why you chose to do this, whatever it is you're doing, as opposed to anything else, because you think you have some insights about the industry or about whatever it is that you're doing. But the truth is you really want to test those hypotheses. So if you don't know, again, if you don't know your target backer, you really don't have a way of communicating to them very clearly, right? And it's going to be very hard to drive them to action. On the flip side, understanding your target backer will really allow you to figure out the best places to spend time marketing. It's going to allow you to come up with a good, very targeted messaging. It's going to also allow you to figure out who are the alliances you need to make, right? So who are the bloggers, who are the industry leaders, who are the other people that you need to connect to that already have very strong ties with your target audience. And lastly, it's really going to allow you to fine-tune your offering. As you're talking to all of the bloggers, all of the industry leaders that your target backers already follow, you're going to learn more and more about your target following. So how do you create buyer backer persona? Well, mostly research, right? We're going to start by looking at previous campaigns and relative market. You're going to interview friends, existing or potential customers and backers. You're going to reach out to industry leaders, and you're going to create survey or focus groups. Although I will tell you that this last one is survey and focus groups is really my least favorite way to do this. I am actually quite fond of customer discovery, and I'll tell you that this is the process that I'm very, very personally involved with. It's actually also a program that I'm involved with here in Atlanta, which is called Customer Discovery, Product Market Fit. And I'll tell you that I would never try to build a service or a product without talking to my target consumers first. After talking to 20, 30, 50, 100 of them, you get some really deep insights about your target market that position you way differently. I mean, it's really a competitive advantage to have these insights. Anyways, let's move on. So how do you leverage your buyer personas? Well, again, this is gonna allow you to come up with very targeted messaging, targeted call to actions, and congruent feel to your campaign. Once you understand their pains, their frictions, once you understand who these people are and how do they experience the problem that you're trying to address, you're going to be able to speak to them using their language. Because I will tell you that lots of times how we experience solutions and how we experience our offering versus how those that we're trying to target experience it differs quite a bit. Okay, so how do you go about compiling this personal research? Well, first, we created a checklist for you. Go ahead and download it. I do want you to create separate worksheet for each type of persona. So here are the minimums, okay? You have to have a primary persona. I do suggest you create a file for each one of the friend clusters we've discovered in your Facebook, that we've discovered in your LinkedIn. because it's really going to help you come up with better messaging if you have that persona in front of you. You're going to know who it is you're talking to. So you really want to go through this exercise. As you're doing your research, I will recommend you try to do face-to-face, as many face-to-face interviews as possible. If that's not really possible, if that's not an option, my second favorite way is video conference, either Skype or Google Hangout or whatever software or service do you use. Try to get that. Phone and surveys are probably my least favorite ways, and the reasons for that are you just don't get enough information. When you're face to face with somebody and you ask some of these questions, reading their emotions and seeing how their eye sparkles up or how they slum when something is mentioned, it really gives you a way to do a much better job driving the interview. So I will also say that although we've tabulated some questions to which you want to get the answers, I will say that you really want to take a kind of open question approach to this research, because what you're really trying to do is connect with your target consumer. What you're going to be doing is really combining findings into real data, and I'll tell you, you have to be organized with this. I love using Evernote. Google Drive is another good tool, but whatever you do, make sure that you're organized with your data. Right? Another thing is also focus on why behind behaviors. Basically, focus on motivations behind behaviors. You have to pay attention to not just what someone is doing, but why they're doing it. Choose, again, one primary persona. All other personas are secondary or subset of the first. When it comes to the first persona, how do you decide who it is? Well, where do you want to make money? So who is it that you're really creating all of this for? Who do you think is willing or happy to pay for what it is that you're creating? That's going to be your primary persona. Another thing is keep persona fictional, right? But realistic. So no one has one-size-fit-all customers. So don't define your persona by describing just one real person. However, tell your persona's story. So don't just list facts about them. Weave those facts into detailed representation of who persona is in a real life, right? Or as a person, if you will. So tell your persona story. Your target backers, your target buyer, they're not just a data point. So use the story to humanize your persona. However, still be very careful to keep them fictional. And we'll go into a little more details on this in following slides. What type of information are we looking for? So first, obviously, is demographic information, right? Their age, sex, marital status, so on, education, and so on and so forth. Second is need or want. So we want to understand how do they perceive the need or want that you are trying to fulfill. And don't get confused by this. So I'm going to go back to a concert, right? If you're trying to crowdfund a concert, we're not even talking about a product here. But if you're trying to crowdfund a concert, they have a need. People have a need to go hang out with their friends. They have a need to go out and get cultured, if you will. They have a need to or want to just go out, relax, and party. So being able to capture how they experience that need or want is really going to help you talking to your target consumers or target backers. So another point is, what are their challenges or pain points? So what currently do they dislike about the process? Because if you're trying to fix something that's not really a pain, nobody will really care. If you're not trying to satisfy a need, a burning desire or need that people have, nobody's really going to care. You really need to get that. How do they experience the pain or the need, right? Another thing you want to know is how do they get their information? Who do they currently follow? What blog posts do they read? What groups are they part of? How do they, when they want to satisfy this want or need, where do they go to get information on how to do it? As well as common objections to current solutions, right? So right now I have to do these things and it's just a pain. I like these offerings, but I really dislike having to do this or that. So this is something you really want to capture. And lastly, always ask them about day in their life, because this is really going to help you humanize them and tell personas story, right? Just take some interest. I mean, let them talk. Another great tip I can give you. This is something I learned about a year ago, and I'll tell you that makes us so much different in customer interviews. First of all, people do love talking about themselves, right? So ask questions, don't interrupt, and let them tell you everything they want to tell you. Here's a great trick you can try. After they're done talking, I want you to pause for 10 seconds before you ask them a follow-up question. What you will see is that your customers, they're gonna tell you what they think, right? And if you maintain that 10-second pause, they will start adding more information to the interview. Because I guess people in general are uncomfortable with silence. So if you give them that buffer, another thoughts are gonna cross their mind, and they'll give you lots of times some really good pearls, if you will, right? So, however, I will also say that customer discovery in itself is a program that I suggest you Google. You can go to Udemy and check out how to build a startup. That's actually a program where I first learned about customer discovery, and it's a fairly in-depth program. I highly recommend. Okay, let's move on. So here's an example of what you're going to be capturing, right? So obviously, relevant background info, education, hobbies, marital status, gender, race, household income. And this is obviously, household income is obviously a tricky question. So how are you going to be approaching that is really, you can ask people about their education, and you can ask them about their job, right? Which is going to give you a pretty good idea of kind of the ranges they fall into. And buzzwords. So again, you want to try and use the exact same language your target consumers use when they're describing pains and gains. So next, goals. I want you to get a really great understanding about why they engage in doing whatever it is you're hoping to get them to do. They have to have a very clear motivation for doing it, right? They just want to feel good, or they're trying to resolve a problem, they're trying to, I don't know what, but it really depends on what it is you're trying to crowdfund. But you have to have a very intimate understanding of why this matters to them. So why are they doing what they're trying, why they're doing what they're trying to do, as well as their current challenges. So what is currently standing in the way of them being perfectly happy, right? List those things, and then how can you help? So what do they need right now to improve the current solution? Okay. I want you to write down a few real quotes, as well as common objections. But the real quotes, again, this is really going to help you put personality behind your fictional persona, right? You want, as you're communicating to your team, and this file you will share with your entire team that's helping you market your crowdfunding campaign. So the real quotes are really going to set the tone of what what your target audience, what pains they have, how do they feel, or how do they approach whatever it is you're trying to do. You also want to specify the marketing message. So this is again is going to take a little bit of time to tune this up, and it's an iterative process. What I can tell you about this is try different configurations, try different ways to restate the problem or the benefits, and as you're doing this, look at your target audience, right? In the interviews, at the you really don't want to bring up a whole lot about what you're doing until the very end. And once you tell them what it is you're doing or what it is you're trying to do, I want you to see or take a notice of what clicks with them. Ask them to repeat your message back to them. Okay, your tagline, if you will. And lastly, elevator pitch. So try to do this in as concise way as possible. This is really the idea. And I know that as a creator or as somebody who has spent lots of time working in your project, this might be hard for you. I'll tell you that it certainly was hard for me when I just started. I didn't want to oversimplify what I was doing, but the truth is you just have to. You really have to oversimplify. You have to be very to the point. You have to have a very targeted description of what it is you're doing, because otherwise, if it gets too confusing, people just lose interest. Okay, so I love examples, so I'm going to actually give you an example of FundCaster's buyer persona for the software that we're creating, just so I can kind of walk you through what this is supposed to look like. Okay, everyone, say hi to Tony. We're going to be talking quite a bit about Tony today. So Tony is 33-year-old. He is self-employed, makes about 70 to 80,000 a year. He graduated from college. He does have some expendable income, and he loves to spend it on technology. Tony is an early adopter. He's socially cognizant. He wants to do right by his connections and friends. However, he's not too engaged on social media. So he'll tweet every once in a while. He'll check his Facebook once a day maybe. But he's not. He really needs help engaging his network. So he is an entrepreneur. Maybe that's why he's not spending too much time on social media sites, right? But his ego doesn't prevent him from seeking facts, data, and guidance. He will do whatever it takes to get his business going. Tony's main goal is to validate and finance his project. He also needs help engaging his network, like we already said. As an entrepreneur, Tony works 60 to 70 hours a week. He's wearing multiple hats, and he's often feeling overextended. He would really like to use crowdfunding to finance his next project, but he has very limited understanding of what it takes. So Tony needs education, he needs guidance. He really wants to find a way to track his readiness and progress. He knows that you can't manage what you can't measure. Here are a couple of real quotes from our customer interviews. I will do whatever it takes to get things right. I just need some guidance. I don't want to run another failed campaign. Or I just didn't know what it takes. So these are the last two are from a couple of interviews that we had with people who ran campaigns that were not successful. And common objection for Tony is, I'm not sure I will have time to go through it all. And my answer to Tony is always, well, then you might not be the best candidate for crowdfunding. Because let me tell you guys, I've said this probably plenty of times already, and I will keep on telling you, running a crowdfunding campaign is a full-time job. You do not want to be slacking on this. And even if you have a consultant, even if you have help, if somebody's helping you with social media, unless you're ready to do this full time, unless you're ready to dedicate full 40, 50 hours to running a campaign, you're not going to succeed. Okay? Okay, moving on. So, what do we tell Tony? Tell him, Tony, run a data-driven crowdfunding campaign. Take speculation out of it. Let us help you track key performance metrics, right? Our elevator pitch to Tony is, FundCaster is our crowdfunding prediction engine that helps campaigners estimate and improve their chance of success prior to launch. That's what we tell Tony. So this is not for this class, although I will tell you, even for this class, I think there's probably a whole lot of overlap between the well, not I think, actually there is a whole lot of overlap between our customer persona, meaning you, the person who's taking this class, as well as the people we're targeting with our app. Actually, unless you are a female, and in that case I apologize, the good news is females are actually more successful in crowdfunding, although they set smaller goals. But demographics skews male. I believe there's 80+% of people running crowdfunding campaigns are males. So there you go. But my point is, if we are good at what we do, you should be very similar to Tony. There should be lots of similar points between you and Tony. And I'll also tell you, Tony is a completely fictional person. However, none of the facts that I stated about Tony are made up. This is information we pulled from our customer interviews. So you wanna, as you're going through the data that you collected, you want to get these facts and you want to interweave them together into a story to truly personalize Tony and to give him life, right? So it's not just a data point, but there's actually a person behind this profile. Another thing to make sure you understand, customer discovery is an ongoing process. And remember, most of this is going to be a result of your research, but some of it is also going to be based on educated speculation, right? You know your target audience. I mean, you can read between the lines on some of the things, and actually, the more customer interviews you complete, the more you're going to be able to read between those lines, because similar patterns are going to start emerging, and inevitably, some of your original assumptions are going to change, and that's fine, right? That is really absolutely okay. Don't let your ego get in the way, okay? Cherish the moments when you realize that you were wrong about something. Because I'll tell you that every time you find out you were wrong, you're actually one step closer to being right, right? So finding out those jewels, finding out some of the assumptions, finding out that some of your assumptions were wrong, that's actually a very positive thing, and it gets you that much closer to being successful. So, I will say, really concentrate on disproving your hypothesis and failing forward. This is a very common approach and lean startup. But I'll tell you, this really is a scientific method, and being able to track, measure, and iterate through your findings is really what's going to get you to be successful. Okay. Last piece of advice here is make sure to keep your personas fictional. You don't want to make your customer persona just based on one person. You want to have at least, remember, if we're talking about the primary persona, I will say if you're doing anything less than 20, you're not doing a good job. But when it comes to the clusters in your own network, 5-10 is the minimum I would do, guys. So if you're really dedicated to what you're doing, I mean, you really want to know, not for anybody else's sake, but for your own sake, right? You want to understand the market you're trying to serve. So with that, I'll stop.